This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Smile, the makers of the brand new PDF Pen 6, PDF Pen Pro 6, and PDF Pen for iPad and PDF Pen for iPhone. Find out more about all the flavors of PDF Pen at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the Talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it seems we talk a lot to the folks from TidBITS in its many variations, and that's because, first of all, they're such good people, and second of all, they produce such great information that we all know and love. One of the most recent additions, though, to the TidBITS family is Mr. Josh Centers. He is now the managing editor for TidBITS, and we thought it was about time we drug him out from behind the microphone and the pen, or the keyboard, and let you meet him. Josh, welcome to MacVoices for your first time.
Thanks, Chuck. It's great to be here.
So, Josh, nobody just kind of walks into TidBITS and gets a position. So I was kind of intrigued when I first heard your voice because I was not familiar with your work before, and I guess I just hadn't been paying attention to bylines the way I should. So how about if we ask you to go through, kind of how it all happened, what your background is, and what you do, what you have done in the past, what you're still doing.
Well, I actually majored in journalism at college. I went to Western Kentucky University, and which is actually one of the better journalism schools in the country. But after I got out, I realized, oh, hey, there's not many jobs in it. So I just kind of, horsed around for a while, did various, odd jobs. And then in August of last year, I started a site, joshcenters.com, where I was, talking more about career development stuff, and I was just kind of getting a feel for what I wanted to do with my life. And in the process, I just started writing about Apple, just kind of naturally, and had a lucky break a month in. I wrote a speculative article about a Retina iMac Pro to replace the Mac Pro, which was turned out to be totally wrong, but was linked to by Jim Dalrymple at The Loop. And from there, about a month later, had a problem with my iPhone 5 where I realized it was leaking data like a sieve and burning up my data cap. And that was noticed by Glenn Fleischman, who writes for just about everyone, including TidBITS. And he linked to my posts over there, and then he dropped a kind word into Adam. And in December of last year, Adam invited me to start freelancing for TidBITS, and started developing a relationship and started writing some articles for him that were pretty well received. And just kept saying to Adam, hey, I got a kid on the way. I'd love to stay home and be able to write about this stuff full time. And and he surprised me a few months ago. He was like, hey, got a contract for you. Why don't you check it out? So, it was a combination of hard work, good luck, and lots of begging.
Yeah, the begging always helps, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I also know that you've done some work for Macworld, and I say done. I'm not sure. Are you still doing work for Macworld, and are you still doing work for Sweet Home? Which is, I think that's a Wirecutter offshoot, is it not?
Yeah, it's a sister site to the Wirecutter, where the Wirecutter focuses more on picking the best gadget in a certain, tech gadget in a certain category. Sweet Home is more about home goods, what's the best shower caddy, or like the article I did for them recently about what's the best trash bag. Which is and they're both great resources, and I say that not just because I write for them, but I was a big fan of the Wirecutter even before I was invited. And I also still write for Macworld. Got a couple of pieces coming up, and the next issue of Macworld will actually have the print edition will actually have one of my articles in it. So I'm very happy about that. And that was something I just kind of looked into. Also, Roman Loyola, hope I got that right, emailed me and he's like, hey, would you like to contribute some stuff? I'm like, sure, that'd be great.
That's great. So it sounds like, just as always, it's connections. It's getting noticed by one or two people. They hook you up with somebody else, and you keep on going.
Absolutely. Well, if I had any advice for anybody trying to get in this field, it's just, just go do it and just keep doing it. I fumbled around the internet for a long time, trying to get things off the ground and never did. And the lesson is just don't give up. Just keep doing it and keep putting your stuff out there and keep getting better at what you do, if that is what you want to do, and make sure the right people see your work. The link I got to from The Loop is just from me, mentioning Jim Dalrymple. I'm like, hey, you might want to read this. This is interesting. And things just kind of took off from there.
Yeah. I want to go back to Sweet Home for just a second. How do you test trash bags, Josh?
Oh, that's a good question. We had to fumble around that for a while. Richard Bagley is actually our testing expert over there, and he came up with the protocol. But basically what we did is we decided tests, and the first one was a weight test, because there's nothing worse. I mean, and really when it comes to trash bags, the only thing it has to do is get the trash from your trash can out the door to the curb without falling apart. And so with that in mind, the first, and I think the most important test, was a weight test. And for that, I used some common household items. I got 20-pound jugs of cat litter, along with also 10-pound bags and like 3.5-pound bags, I think, of cat litter. And I just add some weight to the bag, lifted it up, add some more weight, lift it up, and just see at what point did the bag break. And then the second test was to see how well the bags do with sharp objects like light bulbs, things like that, which you really should be putting in a box anyway, so as not to cut anybody, but things happen. So for that was actually interesting, because we had to think of a scientific way of introducing something like that, where it wasn't just jostling the bag. And the first idea was, well, hey, go get some broken glass and apply some tape. I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound very safe. So what I finally came up with was to get caltrops, which are weapons more known for use by ninjas, but I did the research. They're actually invented by the Romans. And a caltrop is basically it's a sharp piece of steel with 3 different points on it. So no matter how you throw it on the ground, there's a sharp end sticking up. And it was originally used to puncture feet. So if you have enemies approaching your way, you throw some caltrops on the ground, and they get a nasty surprise waiting for them. They're still used nowadays to puncture tires, but I actually found some on Amazon, some of the ninja-style caltrops, little tiny ones, and I took those, taped them to a jug of cat litter, and then put them in a bag, lifted the bag up, hauled it to the curb, and then I put it down and took pictures of the holes it produced in the bag to see if the bag ripped, see how big the holes were. Of course, they all left small holes at least, but some bags did better than others. Some just shredded apart.
I have to say, as an aside here, that Sweet Home, Wirecutter, they're a couple of my favorite sites, because you do things like that. You go way above and beyond to test this stuff, and you always come up with a decent rationale for whatever your best pick is. And even if I don't necessarily agree with it, I can't argue with the methodology that you go through. It just may not be right for me, but well worth checking out, both sites.
Absolutely. And I have to say, of all the sites I've written for, I've been lucky enough to write for, Sweet Home is probably the most challenging, because when you get into the hardware space, it gets it's easy to email a developer and be like, hey, I'd like to check out your app. It's another thing to contact a manufacturer in China and be like, hey, can I get a sample of this and that to test out? And and also having to come up with that scientific rigor. It's one thing to review an application and say, well, this doesn't work great, this doesn't work great, but for us, and my editor Brian Lamb over at Sweet Home, we're all about scientific rigor. There's actually been an article I've been working on since February, just because we've been trying to get the testing protocols right, and try to make sure our data was accurate. So yeah, it's been a huge challenge, and I've learned a lot doing it.
So how has been the transition to managing editor of TidBITS? Is it more work than you thought? Is it less than you thought? Is it as much work as I think it would be? Because my perception is that you all take in a lot of stuff, boil it down to what you think we really need to know, compact it even further by making some sense out of it, and then push it out the door.
Well, for me, it's a dream come true, and so for me, it's the easiest job I've ever had. There are times at WWDC, as soon as that was over, we were all scrambling to write something up about iOS 7 and Mavericks. Last night, we had the financial call and had to scramble to get something out on that. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, it's a dream. Yeah, there is a lot of work, but I come from I was working a corporate job for a few years, and where I was working with a lot of spreadsheets and data analysis and customer service at times, and compared to that, yeah, this is a dream job. I can't complain at all.
Well, how do you go about it, Josh? Do you like I say, do you take in a lot of information and then sort of figure out what it is that you want to cover? because there's so many different angles on so many different things. And you all handle not just news, but you also handle analysis. You also handle some product reviews. And TidBITS has an amazing way or ability to try to track software updates. I still can't figure out how you do all that and have it make sense.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure either. Part of the key is Mac updates. The other part is just seeing updates in the software we use every day, because we do use the things we talk about. And thank you for the kind words on that, Chuck. I think the key is I read about 4 times as much as I write. I spend, most of my mornings just going through the headlines, reading blogs, reading news articles, reading analysis, and just taking it all in. And, one of the things that really helped me a lot in understanding this space is before I joined TidBITS, I listened to lots of podcasts. I drove 100 miles a day commuting to my last job. So I had a lot of time for podcasts. And then if I had data entry, even more time for podcasts. So I listened to shows like yours and Twit and things on 5x5 and all that, and just absorbed all this information, which I think has given me a tremendous boost. I probably won't be able to do the stuff I do now without shows like yours that analyze these sorts of things. But the other aspect, other than just reading a lot of stuff and taking it all in, is lots of argument. Adam and I, not a day goes by we're not arguing about something, and not in a mean way. We're not like name calling or yelling or anything, but we debate things back and forth. And I think that leads to that's what leads to great content, is having well-informed minds come together and be able to take all this stuff in. And I'm the kind of guy. I throw a lot of spaghetti at the wall. I just push lots of ideas out there. Every day or every few days, I'll send an email to the TidBITS staff list with a big list of, hey, here's some things we should cover. And then we start debating over what we should and should not cover. And I think that's how you get great content, is you start with a lot of stuff. You start with the most interesting stuff, and then you pare it down, and you really focus on what you can do best and what's the most interesting.
This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Smile, the makers of great utilities like Text Expander Touch, PDF Pen Pro, PDF Pen for iPhone, PDF Pen for iPad, and Disk Label. Let's talk about the iOS version of Text Expander Touch. Because iOS is so effectively sandboxed and restrictive, it is impossible for Text Expander to do what it does the same way it does it on the Mac. So the geniuses at Smile took a different approach. Build an API and let other developers add Text Expander Touch capabilities to their own apps. The problem with that approach is that other developers had to buy in. And that's where this turns into an amazing testimonial about the power of Text Expander. More and more apps are supporting Text Expander Touch on the iPhone and iPad. Amazing apps like Day One, the great journaling app. Drafts, a fantastic way to capture notes and ideas. Elements, the Markdown powerhouse. IA Writer, the professional writing tool. PDF Pen for iPhone and PDF Pen for iPad. Now there's a surprise. Simple Note, one of my personal favorites. Write Room, the distraction-free writing environment. Daylight Touch, the business productivity manager. OmniFocus for iPad and OmniFocus for iPhone. Task management at its best. Things for iPhone and Things for iPad. More task management. The list goes on and on and on. Over 150 apps and counting. The odds are that you already have a favorite productivity app that supports Text Expander Touch, so what are you waiting for? Get Text Expander Touch now in the iTunes Store and start using all your favorite Text Expander snippets right away, because Text Expander Touch can sync with your Mac through Dropbox. Find out just how powerful your apps can be when they are Text Expander enhanced. Text Expander Touch from Smile. Learn more at smilesoftware.com and get Text Expander Touch in the iTunes App Store. Thanks to Smile for being the longest-running sponsor of MacVoices. Is there a tendency, or not TidBITS necessarily, but you, is there a tendency to look toward the positive stories and the the things that you think everybody wants to hear about that are uplifting, or do you have to fight off that temptation to go to the negative side? Because it seems like there's an awful lot of that for not just in the Apple industry, but in general. And it distresses me at times. And I think that's one reason I'm drawn to TidBITS, because I feel like there's, at the very least, a decent balance of that.
Oh, well, I'm, full confession, I'm a very cynical, snarky person, and Adam helps keep that in check. I'm the kind of guy, I can read the kind of stuff like Gruber and Dalrymple write about Microsoft or RIM and how they're fumbling and snicker about it, and and these are the kind of things Adam keeps in check. But it's very easy to make, because there's so many stupid things in the tech world. There's so many people making all kinds of idiotic predictions about Apple, all kinds of just bizarre, like dumb moves. I mean, like, look at Windows 8. Who thought that was a good idea? But but yeah, I agree. It's not the best thing for TidBITS to be making fun of stuff and bashing it. So I save that for my own side commentary. But yeah, I tend to be kind of the darker side of things.
Well, I've noticed a little bit of the cynicism in your Twitter feed, and that's not a bad thing. It's just because there's a little snark in there too, and it's entertaining. But I'm always kind of intrigued as to how everybody's personality reflects on what they publish and where they publish and how they publish.
Yeah. Well, and I think my snark and cynicism comes from a place where I want things to do well. I want Microsoft to do well. I want RIM to come out with a decent phone. I want Apple's products to be great. Every app I review because I think this either could be great or should be great. I don't take it upon myself to waste time with something I hate just to, so I can trash it all over the place. But now if, I come across, there's a lot of times I've come across something like, wow, this looks great. I really want to review this. And then I use it. I'm like, yeah, this isn't so great. Now, I'll say that not because I want to trash the developer or trash the product, because I want to try to help make the product better. I want to say, hey, this is what you need to do to make this great.
That's an interesting way to approach it, and I admire you for it instead of just making a living trashing other people's stuff. No, I'm serious. This is offered as constructive criticism. This is a way that you might go to make it better, at least in one man's opinion.
Well, thank you. And, the thing to keep in mind is this stuff is hard. Developing is hard. Design is hard. If these were easy things, then we would have a lot more great stuff than we do. And I think that's something a lot of tech journalists and a lot of, even readers don't quite understand is, a lot of the stuff that's done day to day, work is work, and even if the end result isn't great, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
And that's something we need to appreciate.
Yeah, I agree. I went to Alt WWDC this year, the conference that ran in parallel with WWDC, and got to spend, for the first time, an extended period with a bunch of developers. And it really did change my perspective on things a little bit. The passion that is involved, the work that's involved, just the intensity of what they do and their desire to do well. And frankly, some people have the talent for it and some don't. But the passion is always there, and that makes a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and being in the tech press now, and I'm sure you get this too, I get probably 1,000 press releases a day from someone wanting to brag about their product. And I feel bad in a way because it's like, hey, you probably put a lot of time and money into building this, and I feel bad for not wanting to cover it. But, you have to filter these things somehow. Well,
and the fact of the matter is, I guess it's like when you're in high school and you go to art class, some people have a lot of natural talent or ability or something wherever they got it. And then there's some of us, like me, who tend to make things that look like a truck ran over it and then backed up and ran over it again. So.
Well, I think that's one of the important things, for everyone in life is to, try a lot of different things and realize both where your passions and your talents lie. And sometimes those don't intersect as well as you might like. Maybe there's something you're passionate about that you're not very good at. Maybe something you're really good at that you're not passionate about. But it's important to find where those things intersect and how to make the most out of them. One of the things I've learned is that I'm not an accountant. I tried that for a while, bad at it. So, so that's something I try to avoid, and that's my general advice to anybody. Try a lot of things, see what sticks, and see what you really like to do. And you don't know what you can do until you try. I'm just a country boy from Tennessee. I never thought I'd actually get to work for a legendary tech outlet like TidBITS, or get printed in Macworld or all these things. But like I said, you don't know what you can do till you try. And it's amazing what the internet makes possible these days.
Yeah. Yeah, that is something that has changed the game. And listening to stories like yours, it just reminds you that you can be anywhere, anytime, at any skill level, and make a difference to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Absolutely.
really important. Yeah, Josh. First of all, I wanted to say, hopefully a premature congratulations on the baby, because I know we said, okay, this interview may not happen if your wife goes into labor. So we're getting it done. But also, you had one interesting article recently that I wanted to just touch on, that you actually had to set up a workspace at your house once you got the job with TidBITS.
Mm-hmm.
And I find this interesting. I mean, okay, so you slap down a desk, you put up a chair, and you're gone. You put a little more time and thought into it, and I want to just ask you to talk about that a little bit. I think there are a lot of folks that would benefit from either setting up a workspace at home or re-looking at their workspace to make it more effective.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And at first it was literally. Well, we have a kind of a small house, and my wife owned it before we were married. So originally it was a storage room. Then her brother moved in shortly after we started dating, and then he moved his stuff out, but he left a desk here. So literally when I started out, I slapped my 15-inch MacBook Pro down on this borrowed plastic desk, and that's where I worked from, at least at first. And actually, even before that, I was writing stuff from the couch, from the kitchen table, wherever I can find it, which that would be my first piece of advice. If you want to write for a living, get a laptop, because you can do it, that way you can write from anywhere. And then it was experimentation, because he eventually wanted his desk back, as one does. And so I moved a tall table in here, and so I had a sort of a standing desk for a while, and then I found out that wasn't working for me, so I actually had to commission a desk, because it's so hard to find a desk that fits you. My biggest problem with them is either they're too short or they're too tall, and your wrists end up curving like this, which is, I don't know if you can hear the cracking and crunching in my wrists as I rotate them, but my wrists have had it. So I need something that's right there at about lap height, but I also need leg room. So I actually had to have a friend of mine have his dad build me a desk custom made out of and it's a really nice desk. You hear how solid it is right there. But yeah, no drawers, no the cruft you typically see in a desk. I used an ergonomic calculator to get it just right. The other thing too was that I'm a big fan of Wi-Fi. I hate wires, although I have tons of them on my desk right now. It's just unavoidable. But yeah, one of the things I had to do was get an Ethernet connection here, because for things like this and for our staff Google Hangouts, Wi-Fi just doesn't cut it. It's just not reliable enough for communication like this. So I actually had to cut a bigger hole in the wall. There was already a hole there for a telephone jack, and ordered some stuff off Monoprice so I could route an Ethernet cable in here. And also, Adam really pushed me to get a larger screen, because more screen space equals more productivity. It's a simple formula, and for that, I went to my friends over at the Wirecutter, who recommended this great Dell monitor that I'm staring at right now, as opposed to the Apple Cinema display, which is that one you have in the background there, or is
no? That's an iMac.
Oh, okay. Well, they're pretty similar.
Yeah.
That was another thing we thought about too. Was maybe I can get an iMac, but the fact is that a Mac Mini and a Apple Cinema display are still cheaper than a 27-inch iMac. But then looking at the Cinema display, there's so many problems with it. In particular, John Siracusa of the formerly of the Hypercritical podcast. He also writes the great Mac OS X reviews for Ars Technica. But I've heard him talk endlessly about all the problems he's had with his. The firmware went bad, the camera went out, something isn't working, the Thunderbolt dock isn't working. Took it to the Apple Store, got a bad one back, took it back to the Apple Store. I'm like, I'll just go with the Dell. And Although I'm not a big fan of Dell products, I personally I think their laptops are crap. Their desktops aren't that great, but their monitors are awesome. So I can and about half the price of Apple's. So I can highly recommend that. Another thing too to look at, if you're setting up a home office is, hey, you're getting to work from home. Enjoy it a little bit. One of the things I hated the most about being a corporate stooge is the awful coffee we had, the awful burnt, stale coffee. And so one of the things I really relished in was being able to make good coffee. So I got a subscription to Tonks. I pulled out the old AeroPress, which if you've never seen, it's like a plastic syringe for coffee from the same people who make the Frisbee. Got a kettle, and so yeah, and a Barista, I think I pronounced that right, Barista Encore grinder, which is the most expensive thing by far. It was like $115 when I got it on sale. But, I get up every morning, I put my coffee in there, I grind it, boil the water, and it takes about 5 minutes to make 1 cup of coffee, but it's so worth it. And a good coffee will help increase your productivity as well, I've found.
So which increases your productivity more, Josh? Screen space or better coffee?
Better coffee, without doubt. I can work from anywhere. I can work from a couch. I could probably work in an airplane. I could work probably at a rock concert. I got to have coffee.
Gotta have coffee. Well, that's an interesting priority mix there, but well, it's great to talk to you finally, and hopefully this will be the first of many visits to MacVoices. But I congratulate you on the position and also compliment you on the work so far. It's great. I know Adam and Tanya both have said, boy, it's so great to have Josh here to sort of funnel off some of the things that need to be done so that they can concentrate on other things.
Well, thank you for your kind words, Chuck, and it's great to hear they're liking what I'm doing, and I'm very proud of it. I think we've done some great things in the past few months at TidBITS.
Folks, I'll have links in the show notes to Josh, to everything he does, all the places he is. He's on obviously the social networks and all. Check him out. I'll put links in the show notes to everything he advocates for his office or for your office, so you can set it up and be just as productive as Josh. Josh, thanks so much. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you, Chuck. It was great to meet you.
Folks, this is the Talk of the Mac Community, Mac Voices. I'm Chuck Joyner. We will be back again with more soon. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, app.net, Google+, Facebook, and for more Apple, Mac, and tech-related shows, including Mac Voices, Mac Notables, the Mac Jury, and the Mac Voices Briefing. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com.